Welcome, everybody. My name is Larry Keene. I'm the Senior Vice President of Government and Public Affairs and General Counsel for the NSSF. Hello, I see my good friend Jim there. Welcome to the Governor's Forum. We have, as Mark indicated, we have a special guest we'd like to invite up on the stage to say a few words. We're very honored to have David Warrington, the White House counsel, come address you for a few minutes.
Thanks, everybody. First of all, you're looking at me and going like, he doesn't look like a governor. I'm not a governor. I'm the White House counsel for President Trump. But I thought it was important. I want to thank Larry and NSSF for having me here. It's an honor, and it's just amazing to see the entire show that this event is. I mean, it's just kind of overwhelming. But I think it was President Trump wants to convey that it's very important to him protecting the Second Amendment. And I think what you can see over this last couple days and what you'll see here, I think this is the first time, and I think Larry confirmed this, that you've had a White House counsel at the SHOT Show, that you've had the Deputy Attorney General at SHOT Show, the head of the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice at SHOT Show. We also have, for the first time in history, in the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice, a Second Amendment division that's and as I walk around here, I keep running into people that I work with on a daily basis, and I think to myself, like, okay, well, half the government's in Davos, the other half is out here. Lord knows what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now. But I think it's important for us to convey how important to President Trump protecting the Second Amendment is. He'll remark often to me that when he's thinking about, the journey he's been on for the last 10 years, basically, that the people that stuck with him the longest and the hardest and during the good times and the bad times were the people that supported the Second Amendment. And President Trump is a very loyal guy, and I think in the first year of his administration, we've racked up some wins for the Second Amendment. There's a lot more to do. We're going to continue to do that. We thank you for all your support and anything that we can do to keep this industry growing and vibrant, protecting our Second Amendment rights. President Trump is all in on that. And I think being here, we want to demonstrate that to everybody in the room. So thank you very much for having us, and I look forward to seeing you through the rest of the day, and be good to the governors.
Okay, so thank you, David, and we really appreciate your being here, and he's correct. We've never had White House counsel here. We've never had the Deputy Attorney General here, so we're really pleased, and obviously many governors. And later at 4 o'clock, we will have a forum with, I think, 7 or 8 state Republican attorneys generals who are really on the front lines fighting Second Amendment battles. So with that, we're going to get the governors up on stage and get the show started.
You all in the right line?
Now? Okay. All right, here we go. Oh, wow, this is a wonderful turnout, everybody. Thank you guys for showing up. I'm sure Michael Singleton, I'll be the moderator. And first of all, I want to thank NSSF and Mark Oliver in particular for reaching out to me. He's a dear, dear friend, and asking Sherm, would you be willing to do this? And Mark knows my passion for politics, my passion for the Second Amendment. So, of course, I could not say no. So thank you to everyone engaged in putting this together. We're at the precipice right now in our country as an industry of some really scary and unpredictable things. And from a manufacturer's perspective, you're trying to project what the next several quarters and the next couple of years should look like. From a consumer's perspective, you want to have the confidence that right to keep and carry, that right that is so critical to our foundation as a society. I don't think we would exist without this right. It continues for your children and your grandchildren. And so I appreciate all of the governors for taking the opportunity to be here to talk about this critical issue. So Governor Lombardo, I want to first start with you by saying thank you for hosting this event. You have done a lot of work in the state of Nevada. I have many friends here who are big into guns. Some who were not gun folks a couple years ago, and now they're saying, you need to move here and get out of Virginia, which now we have our own problems in that state. Governor, you guys saw the NICS system crash. You relied on the FBI not too long ago. And that really made it difficult for law-abiding citizens and businesses to get their rights, to get their firearms. And I thought about this when I was just reading the story. And I said, imagine if there was a scenario of a single mom who needed that firearm to protect herself, maybe against an abusive boyfriend or husband, or just to get a firearm to protect herself going and coming from work. The system shutting down like that because of a cyber attack makes it really, really difficult. No fault of yours, no fault of the residents of your state. What are you doing to try to get around that, to prevent this from happening in the future?
Well, yeah, it was well, first of all, thank you everybody for being here, and welcome to the great state of Nevada and the wonderful city of Las Vegas. And hopefully we are good hosts, right? Are we? So a little while ago, we had a major cyber incident, a cyber ransom incident that occurred at the state level within the state functionality. And inclusive of that is the NICS system, as you described. And we were working through the nuances of the attack in totality. So it didn't hit every programmatic, functionality within the entire IT system, but some of it in particular, mostly in social services and welfare, SNAP benefits, those kind of things. But it did hit on the background ability, right? And so there's multiple functionality on the background. It comes from the county to the state to the feds. And the feds kicked us off because they couldn't trust our system, right? And so what was the result of that? We had business owners who were unable to license gun purchases as a result. So it was more of a business environment versus an individual environment that was affected. But you described a different scenario, and you're right, it could be a situation like that. And the reason why they couldn't trust it, but the reason the NICS system itself wasn't down. It was the DAWN system and the sexual predator system, sexual register. And we couldn't very well, with confidence, say we're going to issue a gun permit, ability to purchase a firearm without having those two particular data sets to be evaluated. So what's the workaround? Well, the original thought was we'll forget the feds, just to issue it by the state. Because the perception and the media-driven narrative was it was the feds that were preventing it from happening. And that's not exactly true. So it was the own internal state system. So outside of an individual human being doing it by hand, there really wasn't a workaround. So, but how do you prevent it in the future, right? Because it's a key piece of commerce is not to silo all your systems in one domain. Separate them to the best you can, house them, separate the best you can, and try to get back on your feet sooner than later. So we realize that in short order.
Governor Sanders,
and I'm sorry, just one of the things that caused us to delay it, I think we did it a grand response to it in short order to the tune of 2.5 weeks. But remember, there was a ransom requested on the front end of that, and we refused to pay the ransom. And so that ends up being a longer issue that goes along with it. But I think it was the right thing to do. Hindsight's 2020. We did the right thing. But we have to reclassify individuals or rededicate individuals on what their responsibilities are.
Yeah, look, I must say, Governor, I think in terms of operational efficacy, I thought you guys handled it very, very well. I mean, that's the problem with technology. It's great until it fails, right? And when it fails, you can't always predict those things. And so, Governor Sanders, thinking about that, in your state, you've taken deliberate steps to really protect the Second Amendment for the industry, but also for consumers. You think about utilizing technology to sort of expedite, increase that process, make it more efficient for the consumer, which obviously benefits those who are running businesses in this space. But in terms of the industry, the regulations, the legal pressures that you're seeing in other places, how do you make sure that the businesses who do exist, you guys have attracted some recently, into Arkansas. A lot of people are also moving to your state. The cost of living is very attractive to a lot of people who live in the northeastern corridors. Those folks, those businesses want to make sure that the regulatory system is fair. How do you protect and preserve that?
First, thank you so much. It's great to see you again.
see
And if
you
you want to continue to say great things about our state, I'll cede some of my time back to you. But it's wonderful to be back here at this incredible event and see so many people in this industry. And it's something that we're really proud that we have a lot of in the state of Arkansas. We are now the #3 exporter of arms and ammunitions in the country. I like to say the only reason we're not #1 is because so many people in Arkansas are buying our products and keeping them in the state. But I think it's much bigger than the regulatory environment. It's much bigger than the economic development and the workforce. I think it really goes to the core of what this industry means and what it stands for, and ultimately what I think it provides for this country. I'm going to tell a quick story just because I think it paints a picture better than me talking about any legislation or specific policy, but it's understanding why it's important. So I'm a mom. I have a 13-year-old daughter. I have 2 sons that are 12 and 10. And my 12 and 10-year-old boys have discovered just an absolute passion for all things outdoors. They love to hunt and to fish, and that's something I love to see them do. I would much rather them be outside exploring God's beautiful creation than looking down at a screen. And so it's something we've really tried to promote in our state. And it's something we love and enjoy doing as a family. And a few weeks ago, my husband was driving my youngest, who's 10, out to go duck hunting. He had just finished playing in a basketball game. It was late at night, and so it was dark outside. And as they're driving about an hour and a half from our home, they had the sunroof of our car open. And he's looking up at the sky, and he's talking about how much he loves to look at the stars. And so they, continue on their drive, and the next morning it was clearly something my 10-year-old was still thinking about. He turns to my husband and he goes, "Hey, Dad, you know what I've decided? I'm going to live in Arkansas, specifically the Delta, for the rest of my life." When you think about it, it really has everything that you need. You can hunt, you can fish, you can farm, and you can see the stars. And I think for so many people, it's really that simple. We want to protect our way of life. We want to make sure that we pass it on to the next generation and that we protect the freedoms that so many of us easily enjoy. But we forget that it doesn't come so easily to some. And I think what this industry really represents is the protection of our greatest freedoms. And, for the Second Amendment, so often we talk about conservation and hunting, and those things are great and amazing. But what it really is protecting every other freedom in the country. If you do not have the right to bear arms, then all of the rights that you enjoy can easily be taken away. And so I think what this industry, what this group, what you do every day represents something far bigger than economic development and what we can sell, but it really represents protecting the freedom that makes America so incredible. And it's why we're proud that we're doing our part in Arkansas. It's why we will continue to do everything we can to grow that industry, to support it, and remove regulation and barriers so that it continues to function at the highest level possible. We're proud that there's so many businesses that call Arkansas home that are part of this space and this industry, and we'll continue to celebrate and support it in every way we can.
That's a really great point. You talked a lot about the growth. Governor Little, you guys have seen incredible growth in Idaho, actually the fastest in the country, I think, for the past several years, if the research that I found is accurate. You think about that expansion, and I'm giving compliments to all the governors today because you guys do represent some really amazing states.
So are you talking to the governor of Idaho or South Dakota?
Of Idaho.
I'm South Dakota.
But South Dakota. But thinking about that growth, I think about it from a commerce perspective first, because in my opinion, what you're seeing in a lot of blue states is that these Democratic governors, Democratic legislators are going after the industry first. So they said, okay, you can sue a firearms manufacturer, or we're going to add a tax to suppressors, despite what Congress just recently did and the president just signed into law. We're going to try to find workarounds. And so to me, I presume from their perspective, if you can attack the industry, then you can slowly erode the right away from a consumer's perspective. How do you inoculate that in your state to assure whatever changes may come in the future at the federal level does not impact the state and residents of your state?
Well, I think it's an interesting question because we look at it, last year we dealt with the coding of firearms.
Yep.
And, that's the backdoor attempt to erode our Second Amendment rights. When they can get industry or the professionals to go after our rights through programs like that. So we introduced legislation to disallow the coding of firearms. And so I think it's pretty simple that it's the left doing by any means possible to limit our Second Amendment rights. And I could talk quite a while, but I think it was probably one of my worst nightmares that I'd have to follow Sarah Sanderson in speaking. But South Dakota has been a pretty unique place to grow up in. And I grew up in western South Dakota on a ranch. And so I think it gives us a totally different perspective in a rural state, small state like South Dakota. That was just part of our life, part of our heritage, part of our culture, part of our livelihood is protecting our rights. And so when I got into the legislature, that was also part of just who I was, carrying pro-life, pro-gun legislation. And that industry has thrived in South Dakota. But in the time I have, I want to talk about where we're at right now, because we talk about President Trump, but we have a very brief opportunity to seize the opportunity that we've seen in President Trump. And I became governor when Kristi Noem was appointed by Trump. And so I had the luxury that Kristi and I didn't have the previous 4 years in the Biden administration, where we're just playing defensive. In the last 11 months, we've had a golden opportunity, and we've seized it in South Dakota. Brandon Maddox is here someplace. I think I saw him in the front. There he is. Raise your hand. Brandon Maddox has Silencer Central in Sioux Falls. The first business we toured when I went on an opportunities tour this summer. And I used him as an example many times since then, because with the new administration, they had issues with a 7-day waiting period for silencers. Our team got a hold of Attorney General Bondi, and within a couple weeks, I got a letter from Brandon. The issue had been resolved. They removed that. Just introduced legislation to deregulate suppressors in the state of South Dakota. We've taken the lead on a lot of things in South Dakota to protect our Second Amendment right, and I think that's probably the biggest message we can take home is, as governors, we have an opportunity, we need to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Governor Gianforte, you had that amazing video, Come Back to America, and that really resonated with me for a number of reasons, not only as a firearms owner, someone who competes in the space, who owns a company in the space, also a guy who's a political person. We're having a lot of conversations in our country right now about the values that we ought to preserve, about continuity. It's easy to destroy, but it takes a long time to build. And our friends on the other side don't necessarily appreciate that. When you think about that, however, in terms of lawful commerce and regulatory systems and financial systems, what examples could you give the industry, things that you've done in the past, what may come this year that you may work with your other colleagues to try to implement? Because again, to me, when you look at California, Virginia, Colorado, New Jersey, Rhode Island, I see these sort of piecemeal surgical legislative attempts as something that I could be wrong, but that I think Democrats are going to try to do nationally. And so for states that are red states, conservative states, we have got to do everything I think we can to prepare for such a moment, because we all know the political pendulum at some point swings back to the other side.
Yeah, well, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be with you. It's great to come to SHOT Show every year. I want to first mention this video I put out, Come Back to America. It came on the heels of a decision in a blue state, Colorado, to outlaw certain types of guns and certain types of magazines. And it seemed, I think you'll find, I mean, you have all Republican governors up here. There's a stark difference between blue states and red states. And Colorado is one of the largest manufacturers of guns. Didn't make any sense to me. So I personally cold called all the major manufacturers in Colorado, and my message was simple. I said, you want to move back to America? And we had a whole bunch of them come and visit. We're now hosting 3 to 6 companies every month to look at moving to Montana. And you do well by yourself to move any one of these red states. In Montana, we have 150 firearms and ammunition manufacturers, more per capita than any other state in the country. We don't have a lot of people, but still a good statistic. I would say you can pick any one of these states, but Montana's the one where you can hunt big game 11 out of 12 months. And as a sportsman myself and love getting in the field, but you're right, we got to have the laws in place to put the guardrails on.
Right.
So I've promoted and signed into law a bill that makes discriminating against firearms companies in the provision of banking services illegal in Montana. We've enacted constitutional carry, which has been done since I came into office. And we've, probably as important, it's the more innovative workforce programs that we've implemented that allow high school students to go work in a job site during the school day and get high school graduation credit. Because 40% of our students choose not to go to college, but it doesn't mean they can't pursue the American dream. And again, I just think it's clear there's such a stark difference between red states and blue states, and I just want to thank you to all you're doing. The other thing we know how to do in Montana is throw a party. So we have a party today at 5 o'clock, and if you want to come, you come up, I'll give you an invitation.
Well said.
I will be at that party. I will be at that
things
party. Governor Pillen, Nebraska is really interesting because you guys have this unicameral system, and that's fascinating to me as someone who works in politics. You're sort of used to having dual houses. You got your House, you have your Senate, and sometimes I guess one would imagine that makes things a little easier. Sometimes that makes things a lot more challenging, I suppose. How are you guys in your state navigating structurally some of the existing firearms manufacturers that you're trying to attract in your state, and maybe even some of the existing ones, giving them the opportunity to grow and to expand, to create jobs for your residents?
I think that the best way to say it, the Epiphany is, right? We have 49 members of the unicameral, one house. The Epiphany is, it's 33-17. Takes 33 votes to do anything, and it only takes 17 votes to stop everything. Now, the good news would be for the Second Amendment. We're a red state. There's times when there's 17 or 18 no's, but historically, the really good thing is that the far left side, the Dems, have not made any progress in taking away. We're 2 million people. We have roughly 1 million people in greater Omaha. One county's a little bit blue, one county's very red. 90 of 93 counties are as red can be. So the good news is not very much damage has been done, so our rights are in. In my first session, we were able to get constitutional carry passed. So I think that a unicameral is fascinating. The solution's really simple. We're working very, very hard to bring business leaders, farmers and ranchers together to get into the process of government, unlike ever that's been before, because we have conservative, like-minded people have to be elected. You know what, I'm so proud of everybody up on this stage. I call it goober politics. There's no goober politics. The people that are governors here are here doing the right thing, and they'll do the right thing no matter what it means for re-election. I tell senators that are on whatever side, I can't do that, I might not get reelected. And as I say, I want to throw up right on this table when you say that. We have to do the right thing and not be so worried about it. I think it's really important. So we're in good, strong position. We're a very red state. Basically, everybody that lives in Omaha grew up on ranches, grew up in farms in the 93 counties. They know how the real world works.
Let me ask you one follow-up, Governor, just because, again, I'm just so fascinated by your system. When you think about the regulatory process, that's something that can just be so overburdensome for whatever sector you happen to operate within. What's your perspective on that as it pertains to the firearms industry?
Well, almost every piece. I mean, we have to keep getting government out of our hair. We're working on getting rid of mandates in education and government and in healthcare and education. So we're working hard on getting rid of the mandates. We're getting rid of mandates at the county level as well, because here's one thing that's consistent in Nebraska. I've been everywhere. This calling happened 5 years ago. I have not met a Nebraskan yet that wants to be told what to do. So we need to get government out of our hair.
I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. Governor Roden, you guys have done a lot to focus on the shooting sports and the growth and infrastructure there, job creation, which I think is just so key. Obviously, we're in Q1 of 26, a couple more weeks, 2 more weeks left in the month of January. As you look at the next several quarters, you look at the rest of the year, what are going to be some of your top priorities in terms of trying to create the environment for job creation in the industry?
Well, within the shooting industry?
Correct.
Well, it was just a month, 6 weeks ago, I think, that we opened our Pete Lane and Sons shooting complex out in western South Dakota, just about 10 miles out of Rapid City. And we had a big event there, about a $20 million project. And that was no small feat to get that done.
Yeah.
We kind of, Governor Noem, we had to go to the mat with some legislators, and thanks to a lot of support from some of the industries represented right here in the room, and thank you all for that support. We did our grand opening and a ribbon cutting. I got to cut the ribbon with a Smith & Wesson 357 Magnum rifle.
Oh, wow.
Probably the most pressure of my political career. Sitting at a shooting bench with a rifle I'd never shot before, trusting that my people had really sighted it in. But you know,
So how did it go?
I got it, first shot. But for South Dakota, you know, that is such a big part of our the fabric in South Dakota. So, you know, we're open for opportunity in South Dakota and a lot of great things, especially post-COVID. You know, we came through COVID better than any other state in the union. I say that, I'm sure I could get some debate. But the fact of the matter is, our economy's been thriving. And it's because of just our common sense, conservative approach to things. Our shooting industry is at the root of, you know, just our fundamental constitutional values. And so I'm excited. We have a lot of things going for us in South Dakota, and a lot of industries have moved there. And when we did our Open for Opportunities tour, when I get across the state, it was really good to hear from some of the businesses that moved here into South Dakota just a couple years prior to that. You know, I should do a documentary, just listen to their testimonials about bringing their business into a free state like South Dakota, and a state where we actively are looking to reduce regulations and red tape. I think we are the second lowest regulated state in the union, although I think Idaho is #1, so I will say that. I will make that admission. But I think there was a story tied to that as well. So, but yeah, we're very fond of, very proud of our work in promoting economic development and our gun industry.
Look, I like Idaho. I think Idaho is a very beautiful state, Governor, I just have to say. You know, one of the things I think sometimes the average layperson does not think about, Governor, is that states really are sort of the first line of defense in terms of what may come down from the federal level. Now, right now, everything appears to be great. We have the House, we have the Senate, we have the White House. Thank God for that. But who knows what may occur after November? Now, obviously, we still have the Senate. We'll still be able to have a check on whatever radical things may come from the folks on the other side. And thank God we have President Trump in the White House. And so my presumption is that we have a little time to preserve a plethora of things, more importantly, that being the Second Amendment. As you look at the next couple of months, as you think about maybe even 2027, what are some of the things that you're focused on from an industry perspective that you think should be key for all of the governors as you try to figure out what's to come? Yes.
Well, thank you for the endorsement. But I've been around and been to quite a few of our vendors that are here. And besides the fact that we've given the most tax relief, the fact that we're the least regulated, one of the critical things that the people that I talk to today is they need skilled labor. They need particularly CNC machine programmers and operators. They need welders. We put in a new program because we recognize that those career technical jobs really have value. We made a program available to every single, all they have to do is get that high school diploma, and they've got up to $8,000 to become a plumber, to become a welder, to become a machine operators. And the companies that I visited today, so far, that's the critical thing they need. If you got a tax environment and a regulatory environment, and they got the skill set, and what's really important that I see about the rec tech industry, we call it in Idaho, is it's in rural Idaho. The mining industry's got more efficient. The timber industry's got more efficient. Agriculture's got more efficient. So those people in those rural communities, one of the best things they can do is have some kid from that community start a company in his garage and start making parts, pieces, fill in the blank there, and employ their neighbors and do some of the training if we do the baseline training for them. And then those small companies and those small communities replace what's been displaced by technology and mining, logging, food processing, agriculture. And that's really the chemistry that I see that this group brings to us. You don't overtax them, you don't overregulate them. If you give them the labor force they need, they will thrive, and they are. And it's a big part of all the vendors we have here. I might, my good friend Governor Gianforte, the reason he started the Montana party is because he came to our Idaho party and saw what a big success.
Ours is better, though.
So Governor Gordon, Governor Little spoke a lot about just the opportunity, right? And I think for a while, everyone shifted to you got to have a college degree and you have to learn how to code. And now we're seeing that these companies are getting rid of all of those jobs. It's just a reality. And so now the question is starting to become those hands-on skills, as my granddad used to say. You got to know how to build something with your hands. And I think he was 100% correct about that then. I think he's 100% correct about it today. There's a lot of mom and pop shops, some middle-sized companies, some of the big guys. They employ a lot of people in our communities across our country. And one of the things that I have found talking with some of the different owners today of varying sizes, that sometimes you don't always find guys or gals with the skill sets. And so then I started thinking, well, what can some of the states begin to do to make sure that we are equipping our youth with the necessary skills so that those opportunities that do exist, they're ready to fill that void?
Yeah, well, you bet. And it's great to be up here. It's kind of fun to have so many good neighbors. And I will vouch for Larry's shooting skill. He came to one of our 3 guns and demonstrated that. In great form. And it's thank you very much for being here. This is an important meeting, and I've always appreciated having the chance to be here. I'll tell you, you've heard from governors all across the stage here about different things that they're doing. A couple things that we've done with the education thing. First off, It took us, when we sat down and looked at it, it took us 23 years to teach K-12. And that's all the things that were required by the federal government, all the things that other people thought were important, all the things our legislature piled on. 23 years, obviously not workable. So we said, okay, we're going to take this right back to the ground. We're going to talk to parents, we're going to talk to students, we're going to talk to schools, we're going to talk to industry and the communities. We're going to listen around the state and see what it is that people want to do. We call it the reinvigorating and imagining the delivery of education. And what we came back with is something that's unique in pretty much every school. And it really is designed around what the community can offer, what industries want to offer, and what students are interested in. I'm tired of seeing seniors going, this is boring. I'm sitting in a classroom and I want to actually get out and do something. So we have all the apprenticeship programs and other things. What's happened is that teachers are now teaching again. Parents are very much engaged. And I could go on for hours about how cool some of these things are. I'll just give you one example. The PE teacher, the English teacher, and the science teacher at Cody High School said, you know what, we're going to go out on the river, we're going to work with Game and Fish, we're going to build fence, we're going to tag fish. In the evening, we're going to talk about things that are of interest, we're going to read books. And suddenly, all of this stuff is coming back, and I'm hearing from all these students, I never knew about Wallace Stegner. I never knew about, any of these other great authors. And so that has really engaged it. On the other hand, and the other thing we did is we said, okay, our community colleges and our university need to be linked. We need CTE. We need to have industry step up. We want to make sure we're educating things that people actually value. So two things that we did. We said to the industries, this is going to be your program in a couple of years. Help us figure out how to design it. We just passed it off to the private sector, and they're now funding this education. We call it the Wyoming Innovation Partnership. And the second thing is we said, we want to know what the return on investment of that is. And that's open source. So we started, and people, of course, said, well, you didn't measure it right. And my answer to that is, tell us how we can do it better. But now what we're doing is we're educating kids who are getting jobs right there. We still haven't got, I heard it from some of our vendors here today, we need more workforce, we need more people. So we've got gunsmithing and a number of other things that are coming along. But it's been really fun to suddenly say, education isn't something we do from DC. Yep. Education is something we do from the ground up, and we involve our parents in doing that. So that's what we've been doing. Can I take one moment to just talk about what we're doing with Second Amendment rights and if we have a change of administration?
Absolutely.
So just a couple of weeks ago, we introduced the Wyoming stable token. First one in the country. It's under Wyoming. It's a fully reserved, backed token, 1-to-1, and our point is it's in Wyoming. So if the Federal Reserve or if Congress or somebody else does something silly, Wyoming controls this. So we will be able to resist any of the attempts for people to shut down commerce or any of that other stuff. Now, we've already done all the stuff to make sure that credit cards can't be challenged, and we've made sure that your Second Amendment rights always are going to be protected in Wyoming. There's no chance of that ever changing in Wyoming. But I'm just thinking there's some things that we've done that really are guaranteeing that we can take back the control that Congress is so willing to take from us from time to time.
Yeah, I saw some folks nodding their heads when you were just talking about having the workforce available, gunsmithing, et cetera. I just looked and saw a couple guys saying, yeah, we need the workforce. We want to hire people. We have the jobs available. I want to ask this question just to all of the governors, and you guys can jump in however you want. In 2005, I think we're all familiar with the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act, and that was very critical in protecting gun manufacturers. Now, as you guys recall at the onset of my remarks, I talked about what I perceive politically Democrats are trying to do. They're trying to find loopholes to get around that. And that, to me, governors, is very, very damaging because, yeah, there are some big companies in our space, but a lot of companies cannot withstand lengthy and expensive lawsuits coming from all over the place. And I think that's exactly what Democrats are trying to do to slowly break our industry And again, jump in however you want, whoever wants to go first. But what should governors be doing? What can the industry do? What can we as conservative-minded people do to support your efforts in your states to make sure that those things cannot happen where you all are? Feel free, anyone.
I'll jump in. I think the first thing is operate in red states. And so if any of you are operating in a place that isn't, I know this is a competitive group. You can see we even compete over who has the best parties. It's what I love about
The Republican Party is the best party.
Exactly.
Just to be clear.
That's right. But that's what I love about being a governor. That's where you see true reform and difference happening. And I think it's such a critical point and such a critical question. It's one of the reasons I think so many of our states are doing so well is because a lot of the blue states and the left-leaning states are putting so many regulations, so many barriers, and so many difficulties in and on top of businesses that they don't want to operate there anymore, and they're looking for a new place to go. And, you know, when I came to this event a couple years ago, the first question every company we met with wanted to talk about workforce. And that's something I think every governor has spent a lot of time leaning into. How do we create and build a more skilled, qualified workforce? We've all done a lot of reform when it comes to education, everything from pre-K up to higher ed, to apprenticeship programs, because we know that's such a critical component of recruiting and retaining business. Then we started to see the conversation shift over the next year about energy capacity. If we bring our manufacturing plant to your state, can you provide the energy demands that we're going to need to fulfill the commitments that we have? And so everybody started leaning in on that. Now here we are this year, and one of the biggest questions and one of the biggest parts of every conversation is, what does the environment look like in your state? Is this a place where we can run our business, grow our business, expand our business, and be supported by the state in which you run? And that's why I think it is so unbelievably important that you have governors leading states that, one, understand what we're up against, but are also committed to doing the hard work. There's not a person on this stage who isn't supportive of the industry and who isn't going to remove a lot of those unnecessary burdens and regulations, but ultimately is going to stand up and be very public in their support, because we know what it means, we know what it stands for, and that's why certainly I would tell you to operate in a red state, but Arkansas is obviously the best of all the red states. And so Hugh McDonald, who's sitting right there, Hugh, wave your hand, he's the Secretary of Commerce for the state of Arkansas. Feel free to grab either one of us. We'd love to talk to you about working in Arkansas. And if you are already in one of these states, just don't do it in front of my colleagues so that I don't get in trouble later. But it really is an honor to serve alongside each of these people, because they not only believe in their state, they believe in our country, and they're willing to do the hard work that it takes to continue doing great things. And so definitely the best party. And while they may have great parties, we have great bourbon in Arkansas, so we'll be happy to serve that to you too. Thank you all for having us today.
So can we bring the bourbon to the parties? How about that? So look, as we propose to wrap, I want to give a few more governors a chance to jump in on
I want
this.
to expand on what Sarah said before. A lot of the audience may have missed it, but the government is usually standoffish when a private company begins litigation, right?
Yep.
And they fail to stand behind them, the proverbial "I got your back," and say, "We're going to support you," right? And the regulation is a pre-event to that litigation, and it's important, one, to have the right regulatory environment, and two is, as a government and as officials associated with that government, this is what we'll stand for in this state, and we're here to help that company be successful. A lot of the success in litigation is because they have deep pockets on the other end, and they can outweigh you, right, until the business folds, right? And eventually the government can come in and say, hey, we got your back, we're going to support you through this endeavor, as long as their policies and every actions were appropriate, right? And it's important for people to hear that. The other thing is Greg, where's your party at? What's the room?
It's here in the Venetian.
I'm going to have the health department come by there.
Yeah, we're down in the parking garage.
Home state advantage.
Yeah. So you know these guys are talking about these little tiny sad parties.
Wow.
Look at the size of this party, right? You're in Nevada, by the way.
Governor, go ahead.
Cat fight.
You know, I'll maybe take it to a little more serious point. I think that every one of us can say how much we're inspired by the people we get to be around every single day, number one. And number two, maybe how our responsibility is to a much greater degree than I ever thought imaginable to make sure that we all can help us all get comfortable being uncomfortable, speaking things into existence are incredibly important. I have an experience that I want to share as quickly as possible. I haven't gotten to tell Sarah about it when I was in Israel a couple months ago. And if anybody starts giving up and starts wanting to just cowtail to the other side and say, oh, that's not that big a deal, I'm telling you what, we have to get our brass knuckles on and never, ever back up one time. It's really important. If anybody is thinking you can, let me share my experience. And I got to be with Sarah's mom and dad, and maybe a shout out to Sarah's mom and dad, Ambassador of Israel. It's incredible what they do.
I'll second that.
But if anybody wants to wonder about the Second Amendment, I was at the Nova Festival where the 400 people were killed. And then I was in a kibbutz, a community that's 1 mile from the Gaza Strip. A young lady, 21 years old, took us through the community. The community's not recovered. Nobody lives there. 1,000 people live there. 400, October 7th, were slaughtered. 400. Now, let me tell you what happened to that community. We went for trade mission, for solidarity mission. Number one, it's really important. We conservatives understand our relationship. Our strongest ally on the face of the earth is Israel, and we can never, ever tolerate one word of anti-Semitism. It's hogwash, and we all have to get there and be there. Number one. Number two, for the Second Amendment, this community had 1,000 people, and this young lady that is in the service, she had 5 family members killed. And it's really incredible within the community. Within the community, the central area is a bigger building. And she made a point to say that all of our community's guns are here every night. This community believed that they could go over into the Gaza Strip. They could be friends with the Palestinians. They could help them because it was difficult. They did this for years. They brought people from Palestine to their community. They gave them jobs. They fed them. They gave them extra from their gardens. They knew that because everybody's bombed in Israel, they knew that every community, every home had the concrete shelters that if bombs go off. So here's what happened to this community on October 7th at 6:29. The bombs go off. Guess what everybody does when the bombs go off? They go into their shelters. Within 12 minutes, absolute massacre is happening. Bullets are flying, grenades are going off. Guess who came and slaughtered the people in the community? The people that they befriended to try to help. They knew where and they came and slaughtered them. Point simply is, as I was with Sarah's dad and Prime Minister Netanyahu said, look, it's really important, everybody. We're so grateful for President Trump and getting hostages home, but the hardcore reality is every Palestinian wants to kill every Jew on the face of the earth. We have an extraordinary Jewish community in Omaha that we are trying to help and support, and every Jew anywhere that I know. But number two was simply saying that these people were were massacred on the site. And I think what's so important is we have to speak it into existence and understanding, look, without having any guns to protect, they had no chance. And it's got to be our North Star so that we never forget that story and that we keep it alive for the families and the people of Israel. Because my one word from my experience, survival, and without Second Amendment, it's pretty tough. So I think it's important we inspire each other. Thanks for the chance to share that.
I want to, Governors, I want to follow up on that. I have a little more time. I thought I had to wrap here, but they told me I got maybe like 12 more minutes. So if I can, thinking about the importance of the Second Amendment and thinking about why it's key. I mean, I think it is our first civil right. I really do fundamentally believe that. And, Republicans, conservatives have tried to preserve that right. And I know you sometimes will hear from people on the other side, oh, you can't do anything against the government. Or if you guys remember, Joe Biden would say, well, the military has F-16s. I don't know if you guys recall, he would say that often. So there's nothing you can do. There's no reason for civilians to have AR-15s. That's fundamentally how these people think. And so we cannot and should not be surprised when they are attempting to usurp the God-given right to self-defense. And that is fundamentally important, folks. And so for you all as governors, there's only a handful of you. You are fighting an immense fight against some folks, as you stated, Governor, they have very, very deep pockets. And there are a lot of people in here who have spent years building their companies, people here who have inherited their companies from their moms, from their dads, maybe even their grandparents, and are trying to keep that critical legacy alive, moving forward for the next generation, to keep employing people in their communities and across our countries. And sometimes, and I've heard this yesterday from one particular vendor I was talking to, that it's uncertain right now. There's a little bit of uncertainty out there. And from a business perspective, as you all know as governors, as you all know as entrepreneurs, you want certainty. You want to be able to predict what is to come. What can you all do as governors to not only attract these folks to your states? Some businesses may not have the capital to move even though they want to. Are there things that you all can do to just make it a little easier, I guess is my question.
Well, if I may, I think this question is one that's foundational to our country, and this is our 250th year. And if you go back and look at the Constitution, there's always that tension between a federal government that was not supposed to be that strong and states that were supposed to be really quite powerful. Every one of these governors understands that. Every one of these governors has done a phenomenal job of protecting states' rights, and our 10th Amendment was pretty important to that. So I want to rephrase your question just a little bit. I mean, as governors, we're working hard every day. You've heard that. We're all very competitive. But as a community, as a nation, as a country, we have to begin to remember what those foundational principles were and stop the erosion away from the states to the federal government. And it is so critical that we remember this year how important it is that states have the ability to compete, that states have the ability to make sure that we can do commerce. That's one of the things that the federal government is supposed to do. One of the very few things that the federal government is supposed to do is make sure that Arkansas can't cut off Wyoming. Not that you would. But really, as a nation, that is something that is a real call to all of us at this point. Not to forget those foundational principles that built this country, and not to let us sort of gradually dissolve into some sort of, federal sort of, just mess, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. So,
yeah, and I just want to add a little perspective. I think we think the term's been used, chronological snobbery, where we think what's going on today is like the worst it's ever been, and anything that was back in history wasn't so difficult. If you read much history, I read a lot. Our founding fathers fought like cats and dogs about federalist principles versus states' rights. You know, we lived through the civil rights movement in the 60s. We had a civil war pitting the North against the South. This idea of our republic is an incredibly fragile thing that's always been very difficult. And I think what we have something very, very precious in this country. And I am thankful for the Constitution that we have. It's not perfect. Nothing is perfect except one. And we just have to, you know, camp on those things we can do. And I think if there was one thing that I pray for is that as a country, we could focus on the things we have in common, which I think are much greater than the things that separate us, whether we're Democrat or Republican. Because it appears to me the availability of social media, the insincerity of our mainstream media has amplified the divisions that exist between us. And for my part, I try and not exacerbate those differences and focus on those things we have in common. And it's a lot easier to find a path forward doing that.
I think you're right about that, Governor. Go ahead. Did you want to jump in?
Yeah, well, I was trying to search my memory banks, but way back when I was in the legislature. But I carried a bill one year, and it was the Firearms Freedom Act. And it was a product of the same legislation that Wyoming was working on at the time. And it was designed as a vehicle to challenge the federal government on firearms, specifically about interstate commerce clause. And we did that as an experiment and pushing the envelope to challenge the federal government with on their overreach of their rights versus states' rights. And I recount several pieces of legislation that I carried or helped to foster to do that. And I think of that in terms of where we're at right now. Even the legislation that we're moving forward in South Dakota to deregulate suppressors. That's designed as a state law to put the pressure on the feds to do the same. And we have again, a time in history right now where we can be effective in doing that. You know, working with Brooke Rollins, and I've met with all my cabinet members and said, you need to be in the shadow of the Chevron case. We need to be looking through our administrative rules and regulations and putting stuff in front of the feds to deregulate some of this nonsense that has been handed down from the feds. So we have a great opportunity right now to do it, but that might be a very brief one. But I think that's one thing that the states can do to move the needle significantly.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I'm going to ask one more question here for the 2 minutes we have remaining. Governors, jump in, just try to be brief as possible. As you look ahead and you see what's coming, you see what the challenges are, a lot of industry leaders are here, entrepreneurs are here, business owners, et cetera. What message do you want to leave with them as we move forward this year? Because there are a lot of challenges ahead of us as an industry, and we got to figure them out. Governor.
Faith and common sense, simple.
Yeah, and I'd say, I mean, just taking a page from Larry's comments there, this is an exciting time. This is the most amazing time to be alive. And I'm just going to give you one example that gives me an amazing amount of hope. This is an administration willing to work with us. You've got Governor Gianforte, Governor Little, and I that have worked to put together the longest migration corridor in the country. Now, it's not exactly Second Amendment, but it's about antelope and it's about big game hunting. We have Brooke Rollins and we have Secretary Burgum who are willing to participate in that thing. This is a time to run for the fences. This is a great time to be alive. This is the golden age, just to quote somebody I admire a lot.
Go ahead.
Well, I have the fortunate ability to have a neighbor called California.
It's a neighbor?
And,
Sucks to be you.
no, actually, you know what? I want to push back on that comment because through leadership and communication and regulations and tax incentives and tax base and everything that the Republican Party stands for, and Republican government stands for, is to the opposite of many people that do live in California. And the fact that they have the worst governor in the history of the state is enabled Nevada to prosper, right? Enabled Nevada to prosper. And the proverbial statement that was said quite often, you know, welcome to Nevada, but don't bring your politics, right? And that has changed over time, and it's because they're seeing the leadership that is occurring, whatever particular state we represent. And as a body, as a whole, we show success. And, you know, there's a lot of infighting on the other party. On the other side, everybody's worried about who's going to be the president, right? Whereas we work together. It is subtle competition because we represent our states individually, but it's important for people to realize success is dictated with a Republican environment. And the proof's in the pudding, right? The data and the science, and looking forward, like Greg says, is it's important for us to stay together as a group to push back on that media narrative. So.
And I'll just echo a little bit. I think Governor Gordon mentioned, and Governor Gianforte also, I think, walked through some of the complications that we have and the fact that we do have a fragile republic, not necessarily a perfect republic, but we are celebrating our 250th birthday this year. And despite the fact that we have a lot of challenges as states and as an industry and as a country, and it's easy if you look at the news and all the things happening around the world to get discouraged, but I think we have to be reminded that despite all of the difficulties, we still live in the greatest country on the face of the earth. And we get to... And no matter how difficult some of the things that we're dealing with, no matter how many challenges are in front of us, we still get to enjoy the greatest country. And the reason we're the greatest country is because we're the freest country. And what you do protects those freedoms. And each one of us are proud that we get to play a small part in supporting your industries, protecting those freedoms, and ultimately passing them down to the next generation. And I think that when you look out and you're fighting some of those battles and you're getting lawsuits and regulations, don't get discouraged. Remember what you do matters, that it's important, and that we get to do it in the best country in the world. And so we're honored that we get to play a small part in that, so thank you.
I would just tag on to that to add to this. We are the freest nation on the planet because of our foundational understanding, our bedrock principle that our rights, liberties, and freedoms are a product of God, that they're granted to us by God, our Creator. So God's on our side.
That's right.
And I say to my team often, I'm always overly optimistic. And when they ask me about, you know, I tell them it's going to be all right, they say, well, how do you know? And I say, well, because they're all on foot. We're a horseback. So we're a horseback.
Governors, thank you so much. Folks, we are actually about 2-3 minutes over, so I apologize, Governors, for keeping you a little bit late, but thank you so much. Sure, Michael, thank you, Governors,
guys.
for joining us here. Folks, can we all just give the Governors a round of applause? Thank you. Now let's get back to your schedules. Thank you so much.